I'm absolutely delighted to be speaking to Johannes Fisslinger today. I really am. He's been an innovator in integrative medicine and preventative health for 25 years. He's a licensed mental health master trainer, an NLP hypnotherapy master practitioner, biofeedback expert, founder of the National Yoga Month, September, and director-producer of the acclaimed movie Titans of Yoga. In 2004, Johannes co-founded the International Metamedicine Association and has been instrumental in building a worldwide network of meta health professionals. In 2003, he founded Meta Health University, which offers world-class educational and advanced courses, diplomas and degrees in integrative medicine, meta health, lifestyle prescriptions, and meta health yoga. Johannes lives with his wife and 2 children in Munich and Los Angeles. Johannes, welcome, and thank you so much for speaking with us today.
Hello, and thank you for inviting me. It's really an honor to be here with you and your audience, which is, I think, all over the world. So
all over the world. Johannes, I really am excited because I love the meta health science. I really do. But let's just jump straight in. Would you tell us about your background in health and wellness?
Yes, obviously, but I think to get started, I think a lot of people might not know about mental health. So I want to just give a very quick definition. Many of you, I think majority of people around the world now, they are accepting or believing into the mind-body connection, right? That our mind, our emotions play a strong role in our health, right? Mental health moves us to a whole nother level where we know that actually our body is incredibly intelligent, that very specific emotions, specific thoughts that we have, beliefs that running through our mind, usually unconsciously, lifestyle choices, stresses that we have in our lives, they affect very specific organ tissue. So it's not random. It's incredibly brilliant how our body works. And so that's what mental health is all about. Mental health is all about. We're calling it the art and science of self-healing because that is really what we're aiming for, right? That we remove the blockages that many of us have in these different areas, so we allow self-healing to happen. So in terms of my background, I've been, as you said, for so many years, it almost feels like many lifetimes. Because I had different professions in biofeedback. I developed a lot of the biofeedback devices that people might know 20 years ago, and trained in many different therapies. And there's 2 things that I love, that I practice on a daily basis. That one is yoga. I love yoga. And the other one is meta health, and just actually recently, about 3 weeks ago, we combined the 2 and created meta health yoga. So for all the yoga teachers and yogis out there. So there's a way to actually integrate it into yoga.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And so basically, I think most of us, if we are just interested in our own health, or if you're health professionals, there's certain questions that we probably always ask ourselves when we have a symptom, right? We have suddenly a back pain, or you were mentioning before, or I had just a couple of days ago, I had suddenly had headache, right? We experience a symptom, and then we wonder, what's going on here? Why do we have it? Right? Why is it happening now and not 2 weeks ago? So this whole understanding and process, once we realize that actually it's not a random process, there's always specific triggers that trigger a health issue, a stress in our lives, and our body just reflects that. That we can actually not separate our body. In mental health, we are more specifically say specific organ tissue. We can't separate them from our emotions, from our thoughts, or from our social environment, because most of the health issues that we experience actually are triggered by outside experiences that we have, by traumas. We're calling them stress triggers. We have a fight with a wife, with a husband. We have the boss says something really mean to us, or something traumatic, unexpected happens. And that makes it so interesting, because even if we eat well, we do our yoga, we do our meditation, we still are confronted with life situations. And depending how we associate these situations, how we deal with them, has a strong impact how we feel physically, in terms of health.
Yeah, we were chatting earlier, and I will mention it, Johannes, because
it's okay.
It's life. It's life.
It's life.
We had scheduled to speak earlier, but unfortunately, I was spending some time in the bathroom, and we won't go into it deeply. But I do have a very emotional situation with a family illness at the moment, and there are things that you work through, and I was letting go of some trauma, wasn't I? You should say, why now? But it's empowering, isn't it, when you realise that it's not that the body's broken, it's that the body's dealing with something.
Well, what you should do now, take medication for your diarrhea, right? I'm joking. Right? You see, you're exactly right. I mean, if we understand, if our car is broken, we know what is going on, what's wrong, then, okay, good, let's fix it. Now, obviously, our body is so much more complex, right? It's this immense, system of emotions, of thoughts, of energy, of physical body vibration, right? However, from whatever perspective we look at our body-mind, right? Mm-hmm. But let's take this example. I think it's a brilliant example. We have diarrhea, right? And in Metta Health, we know that diarrhea is part of the regeneration phase because every organ tissue, right, goes through 2 phases, basically. I'm simplifying a little bit right now. So we have the stress phase, where suddenly our organ tissue, in this case, that's probably the small or large intestine, is under stress, it cramps, it has certain symptoms in the stress phase, and the symptom, which you probably had days ago, you had constipation, I would think.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So that was the stress phase. And now, because you let go of something, which we call a regeneration trigger, you go into the regeneration phase, and the physical symptom is body finally can let go of stuff. We're calling it a chunk, a piece of information, emotion, life situation we could not digest. So we're letting it go in the regeneration phase. And now you probably feel tired and exhausted, I would think.
A little drained.
Yes. A little bit fuzzy in your head, meaning
yes.
It's just hard to focus today, right?
Yes.
You might also experience your surroundings a bit different because of the decision you made, to let go of something. And once we know that, I think that's the beauty of Metta Health. Suddenly, the fear of having symptoms disappears. We start to look at it, like more a science kind of mind, right? A scientist, like a Sherlock Holmes kind of thing. Oh my God, yeah, that all the pieces fit together. And Metta Health gives you the foundation, the framework. Because if we don't have that framework, and unfortunately, I see this with so many health professionals in our field, in the alternative complementary field, that they know somehow that body-mind connection, but when they're confronted with a health issue, still they consider it to be, oh my God, now I have a problem. No, we don't. It's like, yes, symptoms can be very intense, they can be very painful, they can be dangerous to a point, right? If they're very intense. But it's the interpretation, the explanation that we give ourselves that totally decides what we do about it, right? And another thing I want to mention, which I think is really important, Metta Health is this foundation knowledge for what we call the art and science of self-healing, for a new health paradigm, which I think we all agree we need a new health paradigm, right? And we all work in our different ways to achieve it. But the problem is that we're so split, and so everybody has their own perception and their own understanding. And I never forget when we had our first Metta Health training 10 years ago. It was called Metta Medicine at the time. And we had about 50 people. We had about 10 medical doctors, traditional medicine doctors, naturopath. We had therapists, psychologists, and spiritual healers, energy healers. At the beginning, they're all sitting in their corners and thinking, looking weird at the other ones, right? Thinking I know more than they do, or whatever was going on. But after like a day, knowing Metta Health, it's like, oh my God, you start to have a same foundation. You talk the same language, right? So, and then suddenly they start to mix and mingle, and they accepted each other much more because they saw, wow, medical doctors have an incredible knowledge. in terms of the body, right? An energetic healer might be able to just release emotions so easily and quickly that a medical doctor says, wow, how did you do that? Right? So you start to realize that actually we need all these health professionals, and mental health is not a technique. It's not another whatever tapping or another thing, right? It is this foundational knowledge that we need to really create an integrative medicine, basically.
It's information, isn't it? That's what it is. Information. And as I said before, I find it incredibly empowering, because the tendency is, oh, I've got an upset tummy, it must be the fish I ate on Friday evening. But no, I mean, as I said to you, the situation has been, very emotional. And I've moved on a stage.
Exactly. And see, I think that's where we have to go. As I said, that mental health is this foundation in terms of the analysis and therapy, and creates that foundation where we all can work. But mostly, and we have basically 3 different main principles in mental health that we focus on. Also a bit to simplify, because mental health is deep. I mean, personally, if somebody goes through our 2-year training, that I think they almost have, if they study obviously and go through the program 2-3 years, they have an incredible knowledge about the body. So if, for example, somebody tells you, hey, I have an eczema on my left hand, it's red and inflamed, right? Most of us, okay, so let's ask this question, and but it's not clear what it is. In mental health, it's very clear.
Yes.
It's very clear. We usually have a few questions, like 4 or 5 questions we ask, and we know the whole story.
Yes.
And the beauty is, like, clients, when they notice that, they say, how do you know me so well? How do you know what I just experienced in my life? How do you know how I feel? How do I know which symptoms I had a couple of weeks ago, or I might have actually tomorrow? It's brilliant.
People do think of it as almost magical, don't they? Excuse me. Because I've seen people, sort of like talking to somebody, and they say, well, they've got an issue like in their neck or whatever, and they ask, as you say, 3 or 4 questions, and you can see the person going, are you reading my mind? But it's so scientific, isn't it? This is what
it is.
It's wonderful.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, and once you sort of, I only know the basics, Johannes, because as you say, there is an awful lot to learn, but it doesn't matter to what level, whatever level you do is going to help you. And when you know that, you look round and you go, you've got that because of that. And you can see it. And it's fascinating.
It's fascinating, and whoever is listening right now, if you just have a health issue and you're not a health professional, on that level, I think it's most important actually, because we have so much information out through the internet, and it's so confusing. And if we start to just kind of draw inside and know some of the basics, and I started to mention them, the first one, which is so powerful, it's so simple, but it's tough for most people to get to that point, which is trusting your body's healing intelligence. Because, and I think everyone that experienced mental health on themselves for some time, like, for example, in my case, I had such horrible back pain 7, 8, 9 years ago. So it was so bad, I thought I could never do sports again, or, I love kite surfing, tennis, and all these things. And I was crooked, and it was so much pain. And obviously, at that point, I knew already about mental health. And so it helped me to interpret it in a completely different way. And the moment I resolved that issue, which some people have to go operation, right? They have to go, and that's what the traditional medicine told me. I mean, do an operation, you need to operate on you. And I shifted that thing that triggered me chronically on an ongoing basis, right? And it blew me away. Within a week or 2, this whole thing was gone, and it never came back.
Well, I mean, I share that with you because I've suffered with my back, for a long period of my life. And as I say, again, with the situation that I've been living through, because sometimes situations are ongoing, aren't they? They can carry on for 4 or 5 months. And there are different interpretations for the different stages. Well, 2-3 months ago, from being, sort of quite active and mobile and happy, suddenly a very severe back pain. And I thought, okay, I can deal with this. So I had the hands-on massage and, the little techniques, and I did the emotional work. Now, if I say to you, it makes it real, Johannes, if I say to you that I was lying on the floor trying to clear out my cat's litter tray and I got stuck and I was on the floor for 10 minutes screaming with pain and frightening my cats because I couldn't get up. And 2 weeks later, I was walking around in Europe because I did both.
Yeah, but see, that's an important point you're making, because often what I see is that, that people say, well, you go through these symptoms and there's nothing you need to do, or, it's like, I think you said it the right way. There is very specific steps that we have to address. Once we do them, some is internal, some is external, then our body can heal. And in Meta Health, we have this, maybe we can put up the graphic on the website, or just go to metahealthuniversity.com. There's a free download, which we call the Meta Health color wheel, or the 8 Meta Health milestones of self-healing. And the reason is because we've noticed, we have way over 1,000 mental health professional, doctors, naturopaths, therapists, spiritual healers. It doesn't matter which field you're in. Mental health elevates wherever you are. And they're using that on a daily basis with clients very successfully. And so we noticed they're going all through different types of modalities. So, for example, the first one is become aware of the phases, like you mentioned, right? With the first day, stress, cramping, maybe constipation, right? And then in the second phase, is the letting go. I had the example of the skin eczema, right? Which I love because it's so clear cut, right? So the red inflamed skin, doesn't matter which part of the body, is part of the repair phase, the regeneration phase, right? But the body actually, similar what we said a minute ago, where the body actually uses the microbiome, the microorganisms, increased metabolism on the skin to repair the skin. Because before, there was a stress situation that had to do, and everybody maybe think, and some organs are very simple. The skin is for touching. It's connecting.
Sorry, yes, I did. Yes, it's contact. Touch.
It's contact, right?
Yes.
So if we experience a traumatic or some kind of stress, that we experience a loss of touch, a loss of contact, right? And then obviously where it is in the body tells us even more about how we experienced it, because it's a whole other difference if it's on the skin or if it's in the arms or on the foot, leg, back, and so on. But it's all about this loss of touch. So the moment we experience that stress, often with children, they have neurodermatitis, eczema, they go to the kindergarten, don't want to go, they feel like they're losing their mother, right? Babies in the hospital, they're ripped away basically from their parents, and then they have skin issues. So we know that's the trauma, that's the stress we have. And the interesting part is, when we are in the stress phase, guess what we're thinking about all the time? It's constantly about this touch and about the person that is leaving. And it's, it's interesting, like in personal growth and spirituality, often we say, well, our thoughts create our reality, and the way we think basically creates our reality. And absolutely true. The only difference is that 90% of our thoughts are unconscious.
Yes.
They're symptoms. So in Meta Health, we say, well, we have symptoms on the organ tissue level. We have symptoms on the emotional level, which could be anger, sadness, whatever. We have symptoms in our mind, right? We think about certain repetitive thoughts all the time, depending which part of our body is triggered into stress and repair. We have specific stress triggers, right? And especially if you talk about chronic processes, it's like there's this little needle that pushes a button again and again and again, right? It could be just a word somebody says. It could be just somebody we see, it could be something we feel inside, or just a thought that we have. Many of the chronic health issues we found are actually triggered by our own thinking. It's like we think about that person, bam, we back into, let's say, the skin. And like I mentioned, let me complete that first. I'm so excited to talk about this because it's just amazing how the body works, So we have our mind. The thoughts that we have are symptoms from a mental health perspective because they're not conscious. If we bring something into consciousness, for example, this loss of touch, we bring it into consciousness, right? The cerebral cortex, the frontal cortex in our brain, then it becomes a conscious thought and we can release it and let it go. The emotion, the thought, whatever it is. But there's also a social component which we totally underestimate, right? Our social environment actually has an incredible effect on us, that to a point where it's actually more powerful than our thinking, unless we create the shifts in this body-mind social system that we are. So if you're in an abusive relationship, right? If you have a parent or somebody that is not nice to you, that really stresses you, you feel sad, you feel upset, if you experience something, suddenly a war breaks out, whatever the situation is, that affects you very, very powerful, and we cannot separate. So we cannot separate the social science, the social part of how we live with health, right? And that's why we need to see the interconnection and then realize we can change things internally.
Yes.
Absolutely, we can change things internally, how we perceive that. And I know some might not like that because there's this movement, we can do everything, we just change our thinking. That is partially true.
We live in community.
We have to shift our life, our environment, how we live, not just how we perceive it. And that's why we pay so much attention in mental health. We're calling it the body-mind social connection. It's very, very powerful. And obviously lifestyle, what we eat. I mean, all these things we know are important. But I know so many health conscious, I call them health nuts, which I kind of am too, that eat so well, raw food, the healthy foods, and fitness. Still, they have a lot of symptoms. They experience symptoms. Suddenly something comes along and I ate right, I ate well, right? And I do my meditations. Why do I have this? The same question comes back, And on the other hand, I know people that live very, very unhealthy lives, but still they live to like 80s and 90s and have a great time. Yes. So understanding the underlying process is really what mental health is all about.
Yeah. As I say, I find it incredibly empowering because everybody says, oh yes, well, we know you can't separate the mind from the body. But so many people think that when there is an issue, it's that the fact, something's broken, it's your genes. No. When you have a look at these things and it gives you the opportunity to do something about it. And exactly. That's what I love about it. And also the fact that there's an awful lot to it if you want to take it that far, isn't there? But just with the basics, you know what you're starting with, you know where to go, you know what to look at. You think, I was chatting with somebody recently and I was thinking, we've got something stuck here. And this wasn't in a therapeutic session, this was just chatting with somebody. And I just asked a couple of questions. And it was actually the following day they phoned me back up and they said, you're right, I was holding on to that, wasn't I? And I went, I think so.
Yeah, and see, and often it is very subtle, and I think that's the beauty, that so mental health also is a consciousness, personal growth process, because the reality is, and again, some people might not like that, but our body is brutally honest.
Yes.
And I know I've, if in therapy, like in mental health, we say, well, if the symptoms clear up, then we have resolved it. If they're still there, then it's, we
There's
haven't
more work.
started the journey, but we're not complete yet.
There's more work to be done.
Exactly. And
yes.
and so that brutal but super honest life, it's life giving you feedback, and it is empowering, but it also requires self-responsibility. And that is where we really shift, I think, from the healthcare system, where we had for so many years this fast food medicine where we give responsibilities away, take a pill and be healed kind of thing. And doctors know, politicians know, I think we all know it's not working, right? The side effects, the problems we have, I mean, it's just horrendous. So we have to shift. And I think where we shift towards to this new health paradigm that we're going to see in the next 20 years, there's going to be so many changes, is that we shift to a self-healing model away from a disease management model, disease fixing model, to a self-healing model, where people, kids, everybody kind of knows the basics, what symptoms are. Now, I think that's important to say here. In mental health, we would never ask a client, our mental health specialist, by the way, we have a Mental Health University clinic. Also, you can access mentalhealthuniversity.com from the website. We also have a conference coming up actually in Hawaii, which is going to be great. People all over the world online can join, or they join in Hawaii Live. And you can all access from the mentalhealthuniversity.com website. But basically, when a client comes to one of our mental health specialists, they wouldn't say, well, do this or that, do that. Because it all depends, right? So if somebody comes with a huge tumor, for example, which I think it's important to mention, because these are more the serious, we're calling it serious kind of health issues, breast cancer, carcinoma in situ, or whatever it might be. It's just a client with prostate cancer. And so we would not say, well, do this or that, do only emotional clearing. No, because it depends where the client is. It depends where the status is. So our experience is that most of the time we do need to clear some emotions, because otherwise the tumor or the growth or the symptom wouldn't be there as strongly. Often we have to, and that might create a strong effect already. Sometimes we have to add things. We have to work with our beliefs, our values, what's important to us. We don't have any life goals anymore. That's why our body reacts that way, depending on the organ tissue, obviously. We might have to do nutrition to bring back life force and energy into the body. And sometimes operation, or whatever traditional medicine does, is needed. So it's not like making one thing is better than the other, but like the principle of integrative medicine, whatever is needed for that client, what makes most sense to help the client, that is really the goal.
Working alongside, and I love that. I do absolutely love that. I mean, you were just saying then about the online conference coming up, and by golly, you've got some amazing people. And I'm going to say straight up here, I've interviewed Penny Kroll for things before, because I do love this. I really do love this. Penny Kroll, she's a gorgeous lady. My cat was poorly, and she straight away, she was on the phone. What's he got? What is it? Tell me. We were looking into it. And it even works with your pets. Lovely lady.
Well, and let me just address that, because I think this is so interesting, and that makes the difference, is a difference between mental health and, let's say, psychology or positive thinking. There is a direct link between organ tissue, our mind, emotions, thoughts, and so on, experiences that we have from a social environment, and the brain. Because there is a relay, there is a connection. Every organ tissue has a connection inside the brain. So it's very, we're calling it the biology, right? Like, Bruce Lipton, for example, the biology of the belief. It's not just thinking positively, right? It's a full body experience, right? So if we, and whoever has experienced that knows that, has felt that, if you make a true shift inside of yourself, it almost feels like your body shifts, your brain shifts, your mind. It's like, it's this like, that's the kind of experience. And animals react very, very similar. Yeah. Now, humans are much more complex, but the basic conflicts, biological reactions. So if a cat for example, experiences like, is separated from the family, for example, they might react with eczema. If a cat, for example, which actually I know a friend has a cat that, was abused heavily, and the bones reacted because the bones are have to do with stability, inner strength, self-worth. And same with humans, right? If we are hit in our deepest core, like somebody puts us down again and again and says, "You're dumb, you don't know what to do, you're weak," and puts us down, basically, the skeletal structure is affected and it will adjust. So, but another thing that I like to address, so when our body adjusts, animals or humans, or even plants, it's a biological, meaningful reaction. So the symptoms are not something bad. There are something that actually help us. And one thing I love as an example, remember we talked about the eczema, which is really inflamed and hot and itchy and all that in regeneration. And it's so hypersensitive, right? We can't touch it, right? In the stress phase, right? From the moment we feel a traumatic loss of touch, from that moment, the skin actually is not red. It's actually white. It's kind of pale, and it's less sensitive, right? We actually don't feel that much. It's a bit numb. And so we experience a trauma. The body says, oh, too much to handle for that person. So let's actually help with a little scaling down the sensitivity on the skin so I don't feel that trauma so much. The moment we're ready, right, to look at it, we go through some kind of regeneration. Again, can be different options. How that weight is lifted. That's when the body says, "Oh, finally," and it starts to repair and heal itself. If we let that happen, then our body may take a week or two and go through that repair phase. But if it's triggered again and again with a stress trigger, it becomes chronic. Yes. And unfortunately, that's often the case.
Yes. But that was an interesting point, what you were saying. It all depends on the perspective of the body-mind that we're talking about, doesn't it? And that's why I think, I'm going to use the word fascinating again, because it really is absolutely fascinating.
It absolutely is. Yeah.
Oh, there's just so much. Johannes, I'm keeping an eye on the time here because we are getting too excited, aren't we?
Oh my God.
This is just such wonderful stuff.
And I want to say one more thing, because I think it's fascinating. It creates awareness, right? It changes our thinking. We're calling it the health beliefs and everybody listening, please think about for a second, maybe step back and notice your health beliefs. Whenever you experience a symptom, right, you take a course of action. You do. If you don't do anything, it's as much a course of action if you go to a traditional complementary alternative, right? You take some action. And these actions are determined by your health beliefs. What you believe to be true, how you interpret your life, your symptoms. And so absolutely important to really question that. We update our computers all the time, cell phones, they're updated on a continual basis, but we don't. We leave it running unconsciously. So use mental health and this art and science of self-healing to update your health beliefs. And by the way, I think on the Mental Health University website, there's also a free ebook. I think it's 200-page full ebook that we offer right now. So just go to the free tab and just download as much as you can and study, learn. And I'm very sure as you go deeper, you want to learn more, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, if people start off because, when I see people handing over their body, the care of their body to someone who will give them drugs that causes a side effect, that they give another drug for that side effect, which causes another side effect, and all the while that person feels themselves a victim of their genes. It's not true. It is not true. And as I say, however far you want to take this, it's up to them. But please, let's talk about the online conference coming up, because that's a brilliant place to start. Now, I will say, again, I'm holding my hands up here. I love this stuff. And it must have been, I think, around 7 years ago, I went to a course given by Dr. Kwesi Ananodum.
Yes.
Oh, by golly, that was fascinating.
Yeah, he's great. He's at the conference actually.
Yeah.
Dr. Kwesi. I could just call him Dr. Kwesi.
It's easier, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm just showing off. You see that? It is Dr. Kwesi Ananodrum, isn't it? But it's when you hear it, these things you go, oh my gosh, that's so true, and your mind says, hang on.
Yeah. Well, see, I think that's the beauty of mental health. It's like it just makes so much sense.
Yes.
We intuitively we always knew this, but it's just our mind and the science didn't catch up in that specific way. And like with Dr. Kwesi, which is beautiful, he's a 20, 30 year into traditional medicine, optometry, like an eye doctor, right? Does that still, but he knows the mental health perspective on the eye so well, and it's just mind-blowing. Like he's telling her exactly what you feel and think, and it's like because the symptoms that you have are a reflection of that. And so we have also at the conference, which we're very proud of, is Gary Craig, which many that are in this field, EFT founder that kicked off this huge field of energy psychology, with all its spin-offs basically in terms of EFT methodologies. So he's there. He doesn't do many events, so we're happy to have him there. So if you can come to Hawaii, please do. It's going to be great just to hang out with him. We have Bernie Siegel, which is a legend. We have Ocean Robbins, which is the food revolution, John Robbins, the Robbins family, Baskin Robbins family. We have lots of mental health master trainers from all over the world. And the beauty is, obviously, it's in Waikiki Beach at the Hilton.
Yeah. Wouldn't I love to be there? I'm going to be online, unfortunately.
Well, that's great. We figured, it's a trip. It's so worth it to go there. But people can just go online as live. We broadcast live, like here, kind of like this, broadcast live, and the recordings are going to be available. So you can really study, because the first 2 days is about lectures, introducing and really different aspects of mental health, or this art and science of self-healing. And then there's 3 days of workshops that go way deeper. And so if you're a health professional or just general, just interested in health, it's really amazing information for the 5 days that you get. And again, it's metahealthconference.com, or just go to metahealthuniversity.com. As Meta is META, metahealthuniversity.com. I'm sure there's a link on the page too.
Where we'll put a link on. Johannes, I mean, I do love Meta Health because I think it's the future. I think that, I don't know when, but at some point we'll be looking at all this alongside the medical knowledge that we have, from allopathic medicine. How can you separate it? You can't.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you're right. I mean, you can see these developments already, like the Bruce Liptons and others. That, I mean, US, the integrative medicine becomes more and more, intertwined. And, and honestly, I haven't met a doctor for a long, long time that would not accept that there's a mind-body connection. That actually epigenetics, where basically genes, yes, we have genes that are important, right? But it depends if genes turn on and off. We have so much leeway to shift our life, and I think what I haven't seen a doctor really that would not accept that. And so I think you're right, in the next 10, 20 years, which is such a huge movement. And what mental health is the glue that connects all these different professions.
It connects everything.
That's the beauty, exactly. Because like I said with the example in our workshop, the first one we did, suddenly if you, for example, tell a medical doctor or a spiritual healer that somebody has eczema on the right hand, he's right-wired, right-handed, and he has it for a week, started a week ago, he knows exactly what has been going on in their life, exactly what's the conflict shock, what's the emotion, what's the stress trigger, how's the social component. They know what the organ reactions are in these phases. The medical doctor might look at it from a skin organ perspective, the spiritual healer maybe from an energetic perspective, right? If the perspective is different, but they have the same understanding what is going on in the body-mind social unit that we are.
Yes, I'll tell you what I love. I say people do this because, as I say, if you do work with clients, they'll think you're magic. Because I love it when I see mental health, practitioners look at somebody and say, it's all right, it'll be gone by Saturday. And then they go, Saturday, it did! How did you know that? It's so scientific.
Yeah, because we know that because the body doesn't do anything random.
No, it doesn't.
And once you know that intelligence behind it, it's just kind of, it starts to be an open book instead of a confusion, right? And unfortunately, that's where we are in healthcare. We have so much information, which is a good thing in part. But the essentials, once we know the essentials, we cut all this noise back into the essentials, and suddenly it makes all so much sense.
Yeah, I think it is important as well to say, Johannes. I mean, obviously, it was sort of fairly recently that Angelina Jolie decided that she was at too great a genetic risk of, breast and ovarian cancer. And it's mutilation, isn't it? And that poor woman went through that. You are going to get a bag of genes when you turn up on this earth. But as you say, it's the expression of those genes, it's what turns those on or what turns them off. Because, and I love this bit, what I find absolutely fascinating, why does a child adopted into a family take on their health risks? Why? Meta Health gives you the answer. Do it. Go to the conference. Go to the website. Johannes, we're getting too excited here. But
I could talk for hours about this. I mean, I usually do anyways in our trainings. That's what we do at the Mental Health University. That it's. I think there's two levels that we need really. And thank you so much for spreading the word and the great work that you do and all the whole network. That you work with. It's like just educated in general that we start to really lift up and have an empowering kind of health, self-healing kind of medicine. And the second part is, I think we do need highly qualified health professionals because, also, I mean, I mentioned that very quickly, and I know Gary Craig and others that we work with, I kind of agree with that you can do, let's say, the tapping, the EMDR, or any technique. You can do it to a level where it actually works, but not to the degree when somebody has a serious health issue. You need just skills. You need to know what to do. You need to not just maybe work on emotions, right? There's other things that you might have to do. So we need these highly qualified mental health specialists that know this self-healing process, in all the different fields. And that's really what Mental Health University is all about, and the conference. And I hope you see you guys there, everybody listening.
Finish off. Let's give the website address again, Johannes, and then we must say goodbye.
I know, we're over time, right? So two things. The conference is Meta Health. It's META Health, metahealthconference.com. And the university side, we also have all the links to the conference. It's metahealthuniversity.com. You download the free ebook, Meta Health, your body's healing intelligence, and there's also the graphics and charts and podcasts, lots of free stuff there.
Wonderful. Johannes, I think we've got to leave it there because I could listen for hours as well. Thank you so much for talking to us today. That was brilliant. Thank you.
Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. See you soon. Bye-bye.